Hey there, Sonny, let me ask you a quick question. When you think of the word dandy, what comes to mind? Is it a rather fashionable cat? What about a man unduly devoted to style, neatness, and fashion in dress and appearance? Or could you possibly imagine a rather dapper fellow flying around on a lollipop, shooting candy at all sorts of creatures out to get him in a shoot-'em-up video game from Wii Fiends Games? If you thought the last one, well, good for you, sir, because that there video audio entertainment game is the subject of today's presentation. If you would ask me a month ago, I probably would have thought of the cat. However, now and probably until the end of time, I'll most likely think of this charming little game from the minds of Nicholas and Kevin Barrios of Wii Fiends Games. So Dandy, or A Brief Glimpse into the Life of the Candy Alchemist, is an upcoming shmup game for the PC, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, and Android. And yes, that's its full title, and yes, I absolutely love it. In Dandy, it's your job to defeat hordes of skillfully designed enemies by use of the hundreds of power-up combos available. And it's incredibly fun. The game definitely shares that mysterious and charming tone similar to many behemoth games, a giddy romp through a dangerous and mysterious world. To an extent, it's slightly similar, but at the end of the day, it does have its own very unique tone. In terms of gameplay, you can move up and down and shoot at whatever little nasty is headed your way. You have the option to hold down the fire button or mash it at your own pace. However, holding it down is not its maximum firing frequency, which is really smart. So many enemies fire their own projectiles at your dandy little alchemist here, and most fire faster than you, so button mashing to overpower them is a must in many cases. It requires you to stay alert at all times, rather than feeling like you have too much control of the situation, because you really don't. But the game knows this, and it introduces every new mechanic to you in a sort of controlled environment. Because, especially in its later stages, the game gets very complicated. There are a bunch of different things to keep track of, but don't fret, it gets easier as time goes on. Within your first few games, you'll become pretty good. But then, the game will introduce something completely new, throwing everything you previously knew in jeopardy, as you have to adjust your playstyle accordingly. See, one of the best things is that your worst enemy in the game is nothing you're shooting at. As stated in the game's Kickstarter trailer by the lovely Hans von Harken,
"In this game, you are your worst enemy."
The reason for that being that there are a huge number of enemies who respond to your actions. There are guys who shoot at you when you move, guys who shoot at you when you stay still, guys who shield themselves when you move, guys who shield themselves when you stay still, guys who shoot when you shoot, guys who send a bunch of projectiles your way, and these guys who explode when you kill them, impacting everything around them, including you if you're too close. You seriously need to keep your wits about you or you'll end up dead. That's another thing I should mention. Death. Yeah, you're gonna die a lot. And when you die, you restart the game, no matter how far you are into it. Now, I know that sounds awful, and it can be, but there's some serious motivation for replaying. No two playthroughs are the same. That may not sound like that big of a deal, but it truly is. Of course, the screens do have a similar pattern in terms of what enemies are introduced when, but it's the way they're introduced that's different. Maybe they'll have some extra little enemies around them that you'll have to take care of, or maybe there'll be more than one. The enemy placement is always a surprise no matter what. And not only that, but a new playthrough means a new set of power-ups to try out. At the end of an area, you get to choose between refilling your health or a couple different power-ups. They're all really cool and unique. Part of the fun of the game is figuring out what candies do what and which are your favorites to use. One of my personal favorites is the lime, as it changes your accents from red to green, and in terms of practicality, you get a sour poison sting to hit your enemies with, which is a serious help later on in the game. And each power-up only builds on the ones you already have, so there are an insane number of possible combinations. It all adds to create a very fun experience with seemingly unlimited replayability. One thing that isn't randomized though are the bosses. Yeah, there are 2 bosses and they're pretty killer. I don't want to show you too much, but just take my word for it that they're incredibly intuitive yet challenging. Alright? And let me just say, finishing this game is so incredibly satisfying. My run where I successfully beat the game took me about half an hour. However, combining all the times I died and retried, it added up to about only 4.5 hours. But you know what? After I finished, I wanted to replay it. I immediately wanted to give it another go, and I did, and I died, so yeah. In a market oversaturated by games that can easily be argued as too forgiving, it's really nice to see games like this where you really have to train and hone your skills to get really good at it in order to actually beat it. I'll be honest, at many points I wasn't even sure if I would ever beat the game, but I got good enough. It's so cool. And to make things even better, you can play with a friend. Player 1 controls Dandy, and Player 2 controls this little chap here, acting as a human-controlled familiar, I guess, but he can, like, move independently, so I don't know if I'm breaking, like, the definition of the word familiar, but I don't know, man. The backgrounds and aesthetics of the game were given serious thought, and I can really tell a lot of love was put into all of them, especially the design of our Dandy himself. Of course, power-ups can change things about him, but he's always a joy to look at. Something really cool I noticed while playing was that he gets slightly pushed back by how frequently you attack. If you shoot only a couple shots, he gets pushed back like just a little, but if you mash the button, he gets noticeably pushed backwards. I don't know if that's just me as like a media guy, like noticing things, but still, it's neat. And of course, no shmup is complete without a great soundtrack. The music you've been hearing in the back was composed by Stephanie Fung, and she did a damn good job with it. The songs are enticing and compelling, yet chill enough not to distract you from the game. So that's Dandy. A fantastic, unique game from WeFiends that you should seriously consider checking out. Finally, I'd like to thank WeFiends for giving me the opportunity to review and talk about their game, and Hans von Harken for asking them for a review copy for me when I approached him with the idea. You guys seriously did a great job with this game, and I hope to see Dandy make it to Steam. And that's our broadcast, ladies and gents. We thank you for watching and hope you enjoy. We'll see you back next week on the dandiest damn games in gaming. Toodaloo!